physiology. Now that, as you can guess, is a pretty big topic, right? What do you define as physiology? We have so many organs in our body, and if you think about the fluidic transport processes in the body, you can look at any random topic and you can spend one full semester on it. So in this course, over the next 4 or 5 days, I would plan to cover most things about respiratory biomechanics. By the way, do I need a mic?
Maybe they are coming.
Okay. So, how many of you have seen my research? I know some of you have, like Mangesh has. So, what I do is I develop fluid mechanics models for breathing and particle transport through our airway. And if you think about particle transport, if those particles are supposed to mimic drug particulates, you can think about drug delivery in the airway, in our respiratory system. But if you think about aerosols, droplets that would carry some pathogens in them, you can think about how the infection spreads through our airway, how we get infected from airborne variants. Now for this course, it would take me a while to get into those application-oriented topics like drug delivery or airborne infection. What I plan to do is start from the very scratch of mathematics to develop some basic equations on how an aerosol particulate would move through a complex domain. To derive those equations, we do want to verify those equations with the state of art. As I was developing this material, once I was done deriving a certain equation, I saw that someone has published on this just last year. So that I thought is quite exciting. So whatever hopefully we are going to do over the next couple of days for the theoretical part, we are going to get to that point and try to compare our results with the published literature. So mathematical theoretical analysis is part of this course. Secondly, we are going to do some simulations. Now for the simulations, as I learned, we don't have Wi-Fi in this room, so we have to go to a different room. I will connect to my computing system at my home institution and show some simulations, and then let's see if you guys can run some similar simulations as well. And then the idea is still same. Once we have some simulated data, we are going to compare what we get from our work with some recent papers. I don't think we would have much time to get into experiments, but at least for the theoretical and computational part, the idea is to reach to the point where you can appreciate the current literature. And in fact, if you are interested eventually on problems like this, you can contribute to that. So, in terms of the structure for this course, I know that this screen is pretty bad. Hopefully, you can still understand my bad handwriting. But if you don't, just let me know. I have a bad habit of going beyond the screen. Shout out as well if I do that. And do you guys have access to the cloud folder for this course?
I can say.
Yeah, so there is a cloud folder where I have posted all the lecture notes. Most of the materials are also there. Do you have the printed graphics file?
Yes, that I do.
Yeah, so you might find that useful as you follow the lecture notes, because I'm going to use them to not repeat those sketches, etc. So with that, the first thing that I would do is give you a little details of what are the different topics that we are going to cover. So this course will introduce the tools, both mathematical and computational. the tools from basic mechanics. That could be used to study transport processes. In physiologically realistic domains. As I said, there could be different kinds of physiologically realistic domains. We are going to focus mostly on respiratory biomechanics, with the primary focus being on respiratory biomechanics. Now, yes, you guys can take the notes. Also, you can. I think that's good for learning, but you will have eventual access to this material as well. Okay. So now, in terms of the actual topics to be covered, so the layout of material. So today we are going to start with, as I said, the different mathematical derivations related to motion of aerosols in a fluid. So first we are going to start with motion of a single aerosol. In a fluid. Why single? Because many of the things that we need to know about particular transport in this kind of domain, it is sufficient to think of them as single aerosols, because even at the state of art in the published papers, the particle-particle collision is still not considered. Also, the density of particles in that domain is pretty sparse. So you don't really need to think of them as colliding with each other as they move through the domain. So if we know the trajectory of a single particle, that can actually, in sort of an idealized way, tell a lot about the motion in that kind of domain. So motion of a single aerosol in a fluid. Now what do I define as aerosol? Anyone here who can tell me what is the distinction between aerosols and droplets?
Usually suspended it.
And that is aerosol? You can argue for that, although that is not the definition. Typically, if you look at published works, they assume particulates that are smaller than 5 microns in diameter to be aerosols, and the larger ones are droplets. But even if they are smaller than 5 microns, they are not going to stay suspended in air forever. So even for virus nuclei, which are some micron, they do stay suspended for hours, but eventually they do segment. So it is called an aerosol if it is smaller than 5 micron, and droplet if it is greater than or equal to 5 micron in diameter. Now for mechanicians like us, it doesn't really make that lot of difference whether we are going to call it a droplet, an aerosol, and a particulate. It doesn't really matter. So as a result, you might find some confusing terms in the material. Let's just imagine that these are very small particles that are moving. Sometimes I might call them aerosols or droplets. What matters is if you have some kind of evaporative effect, then it does matter what we call them. But we're not going to consider that the heat transfer effect in this course. So aerosols, equivalent to particulates, equivalent to droplets, whatever I might use in the material, try to understand that it all means the same. Okay, so this is going to take quite a bit of time, this motion of a single particle. And if I'm not wrong, it will probably take all the hours that we have planned for today. Now the second topic would be Introduction to Human Respiratory Tract Anatomy. Both upper and lower airway. So, as I said, the main interest of this course is to apply our knowledge of fluid mechanics to something which is physiological. So, I picked this respiratory system. I will hand this out to you guys, but this is just basically the upper airway. So, it is built from CT scans, 3D reconstructed, 3D printed. But for this material, for this course, I'm also going to go into the lower airway with the bronchial pathways. And I wanted to show this today to sort of establish the motivation of this material. We are not going to think about this very complex pathways yet, not until later tomorrow. So I'll pass this around, you can just take a quick look at it. And we are going to use this geometry hopefully tomorrow or on Wednesday for some material. Okay, so introduction to human respiratory tract anatomy, both upper and lower airway. The third topic would be, from there, once we understand what the respiratory system looks like, we would have deposition mechanics. In the nasal cavity. And I have another 3D print of nasal cavity which sort of tells you how thin the cross sections could be inside on those. So I'll bring that maybe to tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Okay, so once we study the deposition mechanics in this respiratory tract, the fourth topic is the fluid dynamics or the flow physics details within the respiratory tract of the airway. Because essentially, all these particle transfer processes are heavily impacted by the fluid mechanics. And we know that all our anatomies are different. As you can see from this 3D print, the pathways are very complex topologically as well, which leads to very strong vortex dynamics effects in the flow domain. And I would like to study some of that as well. By the way, how many of you have a strong background in fluid mechanics? Because I don't really know all your backgrounds. So everyone is comfortable with basic fluid mechanics? Okay, so after this, till here we are mostly going to stay within pen and paper mathematics. Then we go to developing a numerical mesh. For the upper respiratory tract. And this upper airway will be reconstructed from medical imaging. So I have uploaded some files on that cloud folder, so make sure that you have access to that. The idea is for me to show how to develop the mesh first on projector, and hopefully you guys can use those files to develop your own meshed geometries. And the geometry will look very similar to this one. A different subject, not this actual person, but it would look very similar. So once we build the mesh, we are going to simulate both breathing and particle transport through that subject's airway. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth topic would be numerical simulation. Of inhaled airflow. Within anatomically realistic respiratory tract. So I briefly mentioned that when we study this kind of particle transport in the airway, the applications will be twofold. One for drug delivery, one for studying the motion of pathogens. So after we are done with all this, then I'm going to branch into those applications. So the next will be application 1. The respiratory infection onset mechanics. And this is a very interesting subfield that is coming up over the last couple of years. It got triggered, of course, with COVID-19. But as we know, there are many other diseases that can spread through inhaled transmission, through airborne pathways. And what I am doing in my group is develop the fluid mechanics understanding of what is going on inside our airway. There are other groups who are looking at room level spatial transmission. We have some work on that, but that's not what we are going to show here today, and that's not what my focus is right now. I'm trying to understand what is going on inside our body and how the fluid mechanics is impacting that transport. But once I mention this word infection, just knowing fluid mechanics is not sufficient. You need to understand something else as well. So you need to connect the fluid mechanics with things like virology, with things like immunology. And that is creating that niche subfield of fluid mechanics plus virology plus immunology plus epidemiology to understand how infections start in our airway. So that is application 1, and I'm going to solve some problems which probably will give you some idea on how you can connect the fluid mechanics data with say, virological parameters. Application 2 is targeted intra-airway drug delivery. So now again, the moment I say drug delivery, just fluid mechanics is not going to be sufficient. Ideally, eventually we need to understand the pharmacological considerations. So from fluid mechanics, you can sort of estimate how much drug particles are going to land at a particular tissue site inside that airway, but whether it is sufficient or whether it is safe, that depends on the pharmacological nature of those particles. And I'm going to touch a little bit on those things as well. So this is application 2. Now after this, we will try and brainstorm on the open questions. The reason being this, the material that I'm going to cover today, I have not taught this course before anywhere else. So I would like this class to be a to and fro conversation. There could be things that you might find not very convincing, and let me know, and then we can discuss on how to develop that idea later. And also, once we have a basic understanding of how to approach these research questions using our
announcement.
Yes. Okay. So
just a minor announcement that we need to probably change the venue. Let me find some suitable room, and then he will continue till today 10:30 in the hostel. Maybe to find the alternate venue and think see if the live streaming is being done. Then maybe we can start the second half at 2. But anyway, you guys all are from my group, you will know. But you two are keep in touch with Pula for Mondays, then we will inform accordingly. Anyway, I will also inform by email. So that's everything. So right now you will continue to tell that.
Okay. So the way that I will plan, this is still just a synopsis of what we are going to cover. So I'm not going to go into any material till the second session. Okay, so brainstorming on the open questions, because I do want you guys to appreciate what are the things that are still unsolved out there. After this, I think I'll be done, and then Dr. Shamanta will probably take over. In terms of the topics, I will let him speak eventually on what he wants to cover, but essentially the idea is what other topics of fluid mechanics could be relevant to our understanding of this, of solving problems from this particular area. So I'll keep that empty for now. Now in terms of the reading materials, I think I have uploaded some books on the cloud folder, but let me just note down the names of the books over here. Number one, The Mechanics of Inhaled Pharmaceutical Aerosols by Warren Finley. So if you guys access this book, you will see that he tries to develop the basic mathematics of this kind of system before going into the pharma part. So understanding the basic physics is quite useful in general, and this book is a good resource for that. The second book is Biofluid Mechanics by P. Nithya. So in this book, I think this is still an unpublished e-book which is available from some sources. If you want to access this book, if I have not shared it, just send me an email and I can share it with you. So what he does here is not only respiratory mechanics, but also cardiovascular mechanics, mechanics of blood flow, etc. And especially if you're interested in those other bio problems, I think this book is going to be a good resource. Okay, finally, these lecture notes, I think would give you a good start in understanding problems like this. So especially if you work on topics like this, I think the material that we are going to cover would be useful. And then some research papers. I have uploaded the research papers on the cloud folder. We are going to study some of them during this course. I'm not going to study them, I have already studied them, but you guys need to study them based on how much we proceed till the end of today. I will probably keep a paper to read for you guys tonight. And the reason why I want you to read, you will gradually understand as we go forward in this week. And there will be 2 more papers on the computational side. The one today, the view from today is mostly on the theoretical side. So the research papers are on cloud as well. I should not go into more details because I think with the live streaming, I want this course to be a complete one. So I will briefly touch upon this overall structure of this course in the second session, and then we're going to go into the derivations. So therefore, let's wrap it up here now.
Okay.
But whatever I talked for the last 20 minutes, I'll just touch it upon for 3 minutes and then go into the rest of the material. But as we wrap down, any questions from you guys in terms of what would be best in terms of teaching this material or structure like this course? Are we going to come back to this room, or is this it for this room?
Here I think the internet is not possible to set up that.
Okay.
Like what we can do is after the this session, there may be some short session.
Yeah.
We look for let me ask the academic section, are there some rooms in the lecture complex or some else, right? And then by second half I guess it will be sorted out.
Okay.
There is one room right in the department beside our engineering drawing room, another extra room. It is generally not used, but there are projector and all these things. And LAN also should be there.
And Wi-Fi will be there.
Oh yeah, Wi-Fi will be there.
Because we will need that for
Yeah. So Wi-Fi will be there. So let me just check. If it gets sorted out, we can start at 2 or 130 just in case you can have an agriculture.
So at worst, I would not let him teach on the 5th day. So
Yeah, that is fine because you have come all the way from US. That is not the issue. It is fine. So better like go slow and get the things which are to be communicated in a proper way instead of rushing through everything.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, so let's run down now.
Yeah, and for the time being, maybe like you all can form a simple WhatsApp group and just any change you can readily like follow. Okay, so that's all for this session.
There was another one thing, just make sure that the cloud server folder is shared with them, it will be easier for them.
Yeah, I will just share like whatever materials you have shared.
Yeah.
I will share the whole thing.
Hopefully the projector will be.
Ulal, he will come here or
Here, I will call.
अच्छा, it will call. तो चाय के बाद ऊपर इनको देखो सिंगल का जो प्रोजेक्टर करनी है प्रोजेक्टर है लागत है 10 दिन लगा हुआ है